cameras are on, everyone's on. I'm just waiting for that microphone to come on. Yeah.
It'll connect.
It'll connect in a second. All right, we're gonna get started. We'll start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. Hope everyone dodged the raindrops okay to get here tonight. It's not quite as dark as it was about half an hour ago. Looks like it was, yeah, a lot of people got a little wet, I think, on their way in. As usual, we're gonna start with reviewing and signing payroll and accounts payable. For the last pay period, we had payroll in the amount of $31,317.69. That included 4 hours of overtime for police, 8 for fire, and 0 for highway. We had accounts payable in the amount of $47,293.45, and we did have an ACH payment to Swayze of $241,000.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I've lost worse.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Have a nice evening.
Good night, Chris.
Next on the agenda is our consent agenda. I'll take a motion to approve that.
Moved. Second.
Included in this week's consent agenda is the rec manifest, the treasurer's report, and building permits. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so consent agenda passes. Next is public comment. For those who are going to public comment, one thing that is on our agenda for tonight that is not going to be discussed is the earned time carryover with Chief Bird. That's been rescheduled. If you were planning to speak to that, you might want to wait till that meeting. The communications update is going to be an abbreviated status update because Josh is not here, but if anybody has comments on that, please feel free. As always, for any public commenters, if you'd be willing to come up to the front so we can catch you on the microphone, that would be appreciated. Who do we have who's interested in public comment tonight? Come on up.
Letty Bedard, Middle Road. I was just wondering what is going on with the town email situation, because it's been a while, and this morning there was a missed electrical inspection because the inspector, it didn't go to his Outlook calendar, so I was just checking to see.
Can you give a status update on it?
We are working on it, so our emails were compromised and we were put on a spam blacklist last week. So we haven't been able to email any Gmail accounts since that time, or some Gmail accounts. IT.
From Brentwood NH.
.gov. Yes, so Block 5 has been working with our website vendor and they've removed all of our IP address from the blacklist. But for whatever reason, it's still getting hung up on Google's side. So they're still waiting for Google to clear it so that they can get the Gmails back working.
Is there any workaround or not really?
Not really. This is your house, maybe you can help.
Okay, so
There are
so-
solutions to prevent this.
it's in progress.
Yes.
Getting
Sounds
better?
like it. Extremely inconvenient and sounds like being worked on.
Cool.
Thank you. Any other public comment? No?
Questions, yes. Becky Dunham, 9 Block Drive. John, just a question to you. Any update on when the final report from the charrette will come in?
I haven't received an update.
It's been about 8 weeks, so this is about the time that it should be coming to us.
Agreed.
Okay. And will that be posted on the website so folks can read it? or somewhere? where you
It
can look
will
at
be, I'm not gonna commit to exactly where it will be posted, it will be posted publicly
Okay.
with electronic means.
Okay,
I
okay.
just don't know which website.
Yeah, just a lot of questions from neighbors asking for an update, so I thought I'd ask a question tonight. And second, Jen, last meeting you allowed public comment about conservation issues. Will you allow public comment on the library during that process?
So that was, I think, 2 meetings
2
ago.
meetings ago, sorry.
And
yes.
I made an exception because that was something that I really needed to learn about. And I think we actually had a really good discussion with the board and the public. In general, I prefer for public comment to be at the beginning. I think if there's particular questions or issues that you feel really need to be addressed, you can certainly, bring those forward for me. I think if you have any questions or comments that you want Janice to address, if
Yeah.
you can put them forward now, then she can address them when she comes up, and that probably is the easier way to do it.
Okay, I appreciate the materials that were sent in the packet today, Janice. A lot to read. My questions are, if the donors do not come through, the anticipated income, what happens to where does that money come from? If the grant, the $100,000, the GoFundMe, all of that, if that doesn't come through, will that financial responsibility fall to the town? Second question, has the donor of the $100,000 put restrictions on the gift that may or may not come through? If that's a concern. And just more details on where you are with fundraising at this point. Okay.
Perfect. I'm assuming you're probably planning to answer those things tonight. Perfect.
Probably is, that's why I
Great.
thought.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
Other public comment?
Doug Fenn, One Grove Road. I just want to bring the board up to date on the gas station going in on 125. It's been continued for August 15th. We had 3 representatives at the last meeting from the planning board, and they had a continuance at that time. We weren't aware of it. Not that it was a problem, but Brian and Kate were there, as well as myself. And unfortunately, on the one coming up in August, on the 15th at 7 o'clock, I'm not going to be able to attend. So, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, if anybody's interested, John.
Do you know if it was continued for a specific challenge or reason?
No,
or
they didn't
just-
elaborate.
Okay.
Actually, I think it was a written request, and if they had mentioned it, I did not hear it. But I think it was more getting everything in line. They had asked for a few things. But that's it.
Thank you.
Doug, was this planning board or was it another?
Planning, no, this was ZBA, I'm sorry.
ZBA.
We had 3 representatives of the planning board, 2 alternates and myself.
Perfect. Thank you. Other public comments? Come on up.
Hi, Liz Furia, South Road. As you probably know, I'm applying for the Communications Committee. I did meet with them and spoke to them about the position. Although I did not get selected for rec, I think I'm even more qualified for the communications. My whole background's been teaching English as a foreign language, teaching English to little kids. I worked for a British company one time in Venezuela and taught English. For my previous neighborhood, my city in Alexandria, Virginia, I wrote and edited a newsletter for 9.5 years. Was honored by our county when we left. And when I spoke to the communications committee last Thursday, I've attended something like 4 or 5 meetings. I asked if any of the 4 applicants, any of the other 3 had attended any. They said 1 had attended one. Wasn't the same one I was at, so I don't know who they are, but I'm very interested in this because although I don't have the software, computer side of it, I definitely have the writing, editing. And I come to the town office about once a week to find out which meetings are happening and which have gotten canceled or whatever, because I don't think there's a lot of communication at this time.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
if you want to discuss me in public, you can.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
The one other thing I had that's totally unrelated is for the library. I'm uncertain why the library can't put chain link fence around the 2 sides and have the pathway open to go into the basement.
I believe that may be addressed tonight. Yeah. So
Okay.
thank you for bringing that forward.
Because the other thing that I thought, it seems to me it would be less than $40,000 to 2 pieces of chain link fence, but there's also chain link fence that you can weave like green in and out, so it's blocking the ugly view, you know what I mean? Like there's,
Privacy.
yeah,
Yeah.
privacy that's pretty easy to weave in and out of the fence. So, you know, in terms of the stuff that Paul was talking about and the safety,
Yeah.
I think we just need to not keep on going with not doing anything there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other public comments? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment now and move on to our discussion action items. The first item on our agenda tonight is a communications committee update, and I believe Letty is gonna pinch hit for Josh, who had a conflict tonight. Come on up.
Yes, let me just pull up that, because I am not Josh. Okay, so Josh got several quotes for outfitting this room with better AV equipment for streaming, making it easier for any meeting that's taking place in this room to be streamed with just the flick of a switch, press of a button. And he got several quotes back. The one that he's recommending is coming in at about $15,000, which would include 3 screens, one on this wall, one on this wall, and then one here for the audience. The ability to reserve the room via Outlook and integration with Microsoft Teams. So that would mean that, I guess, in the current system, people call Karen to reserve this space. It would all be done online, so you wouldn't have to be involved in that anymore. A new hardware encoder for streaming, miscellaneous cables and switches. It would reuse the existing speakers that are in the ceiling and would include 2 new cameras, one facing this way and one facing that way, so that when the audience is speaking, you can see who's speaking. The existing camera and hardware encoder, he said, could be moved to the room at the other end of the hall, so we could also stream meetings that were in there, because I know sometimes there are nights when 2 meetings are happening at the same time.
And all of the equipment is portable, so that if we were to relocate to a new facility, we'd be able to take it and outfit a new conference room.
Right, that was
within
one
the
of our
facility.
wish list
Were there
items.
new mics?
So surprisingly, the microphones are the most expensive part, so
Wow.
no, these are fine for now. He did say that he got several other quotes that were in the 6-figure range. Because I guess for a room this size, which is not small and not big, it's like right in the middle, it would be more of an a la carte. They have to put together a specific quote for this space as opposed to something that generally works in a larger or smaller space. I think the next one after this one was 45, 65. It was a lot more.
So
Wow.
this is probably unrelated. I guess it's more of a question for you. When I am traveling, as I do, it is hard to hear on a lot of occasions, like what's actually happening. I can generally make out what most of you are saying. Where does the microphone, am I using these guys?
No, you're using a conference
The
mic
mic.
in the center, but if this is Microsoft Teams integrated, you may be able to
Yes.
dial into
So
to a
if you were
Teams.
dialing in, so Josh gave that as a perfect example. If you were dialing into a meeting, your face would literally be on that screen. You would be able to see all of the things that we can see. You'd see this view and that view.
So does do the cameras automatically switch for who's speaking?
I don't know.
I would assume it would be like a multiplexer, so we would get
Like a
views.
pick and
Yeah.
pick thing.
a big and a small, or,
Yes. The other thing
unless
that
you had somebody actually working a
Yeah.
switcher.
the other thing he specifically mentioned is there have been times when this room is overflowing. You could actually have this meeting streaming in that room. And people in that room that were commenting here, or they could come down here when it was time to comment, just to have more space.
Cool.
Cool.
I am not Josh. But
So he's gonna bring us some official
he's gonna bring
information
you
and
something
quotes.
official. He was waiting for, I think, 2 or 3 other specific numbers. They were kind of dialing in their number, but it was about 15,000, with a very specific list of equipment, and he has volunteered to do the install, which is great, which is another thing that saves us a lot of money. And
Oh, are these New Hampshire companies, by any chance?
I do not know.
Is it one bid or several bids or what?
We got several. This was the one that he thought was the most reasonable and would meet our needs while not being excessively expensive. Especially given that we wanted something that was portable and expandable, so that if we do need it to move to a different space. The other thing we had talked about is that if there is a move to a different space and there is something that is built in there, this system could be put in at the rec center. So when we have like budget meetings, we could straighten things from there. The portability was an important part of the process.
Great, thank you, that's exciting. I think all of us are looking forward to an improved AV situation.
Yes.
Although I do think some of the issues we were having have gotten a little better, right? The sound skipping and that type of stuff. We're not sure why, right? We don't know why it got better,
No, but it seems.
but it did. So whoever did their juju magic, thank you.
Knowing that our upload speed, I would assume it had a lot to do with that, and Comcast may have made some upgrades in the area that.
Right, it helps that. Great, okay. Next on our agenda is Janice for library update.
So thank you for having us here today. I'd like to, before we begin, just publicly thank the people who have been so amazingly generous. We've had some amazing donations. We've had donations to our raffle prizes that just they just blow me away. People from the community have heard what we're doing. They're reaching out to us and saying, hey, can I add to your raffle? So our $500 second prize has gone up over $1,000 at this point. We added a third prize from our very own Mr. Kleinman, Attorney Kleinman, who is offering to do a will and powers of attorney, which is an amazing gift. We have a lot of young families, I think, that would very much appreciate that service. So, and we had 2 community members, 2 little ones, who have been in our story time, who wanted to help, and they ran a lemonade stand here in town, and in just they had X amount of lemonade. When they sold out, they sold out. They raised $50 for our GoFundMe.
That's sweet.
So it's just amazing and heartwarming to see the support that we've gotten, and to realize that Brentwood really does care, and they want this space. So that being said, I'm not sure where to start. Let's see. So just to update on the fencing, we have gotten a quote for 300 6-foot temporary panels for a rental term of 6 months at a unit price of $6.99 per panel, a total of $2,097, with 50 sandbags, which would have to hold them down, again for 6 months at $12 per, equaling 600, so the total being 2,697. Now to answer the question, what does it cover? That is to do a complete wraparound, which would disable us from using the basement at any time during this, meaning we could not have our friends' book sales. They would be out of commission for the time being. We would have a more difficult time getting things up and downstairs. So thinking about that, we have decided that we're probably going to have to do a wraparound each section to leave the ramp still open so we can have access. That being said, without actually having a quote for the linear footage of that, we're looking at probably double this number. So I'm estimating somewhere around 6,000 or maybe a little bit less.
So to
We-
stop people from going either down or up on either side?
Correct.
Okay.
We have, after I remove the cleaning costs in our building maintenance line item, with some of the cuts that we had to make after the budget was cut, we will have $2,336 left in our building maintenance line item for the entire year. Now that pays for things like if I have a flooded toilet or, all those little things that can go wrong in a building, and then especially in a building that is as old as ours. So we are humbly coming to you tonight to, first of all, thank you for bringing up the idea that we really should have this kind of a more solid fencing, but also to ask if it would be possible to have this money from the Capital Reserve Building Maintenance Fund. I don't know if that's possible, I don't know what you have in it, but I don't know how we can go forward with this if we don't ask. So that's.
Can I ask a
number one.
question about this? So this came up as sort of like something we could do right away to reduce our liability and make that site safer. I
Right.
know you're probably gonna talk next about how close you are to fundraising targets, how close you might be to actually hitting go on this project.
Right.
My concern would be, if we're doing a 6-month rental of fencing, might that just overlap with construction, in which case we would just take it down, or the contractor would put up their own? Like, how would those two things interface and potentially run into each other?
So that is the hope, is that, I mean, obviously, they're not going to start construction on that project without keeping it safe.
Right.
I mean, we're gonna have to look at perhaps closing off one of the entrances to the library, just so people can't go around there, kids can't get into it. So, I don't know for sure, because we don't have our contract, we don't have our bid out to any contractors, but I'm thinking that they would need to have that fencing too. So, perhaps I don't know if we would return the fencing after a short amount of time, or if they would pick up that cost for it, if that's how they would do it.
Or if
I'm
they
guessing.
prorate the.
Right, I'm guessing they have to close off the road, but they still need to protect that area, because there's gonna be equipment there, there's gonna be soil all around the place and stuff, so I think it would be a dangerous place. But we don't know until we get to that
Right.
point.
Okay.
And then, I guess the other thing we could do, I can go back to this national fencing, national construction rentals, and see if, I don't know how, I don't know if any of these fence things, that from what they described to me, it's just a section of chain link fence with, a T-stand at the bottom, or two of them, and sandbags. But I don't know if any of them can be on a hinge, and we could just use that to get down into the basement. However, that means we have to be sure that the people that we're letting down into the basement don't decide they want to walk up onto the amphitheater when it's in bad shape right now, I mean, I wouldn't think so, they're adults typically, but if we have a book sale there, kids come in, so, that's
And-
what's tricky about it.
Yeah, and we wouldn't have the staffing. On a Saturday, we usually have one adult and one page. We wouldn't have the staffing to be able to go down and ensure that people weren't crossing that barrier. So
Right.
we have some concerns. Yeah.
So are
And it was
you
hard to get this
planning,
quote.
at this point, are you planning to go back to this company to get a re-quote for something that would make the downstairs still accessible?
I will, yeah. So we had gotten the square footage from the architect, he was the one that came up with that square footage. It wasn't the National Construction Rentals people. So we'll get a better shape of it, we'll let them know exactly what we need and get a quote for that.
And Karen, what's in the building fund?
I believe there's about 100,000.
questions or comments from the board?
How's the warrant article worded? 'Cause I'm not sure this would qualify for the warrant article.
It's for building maintenance and repair.
So maybe,
I think it could qualify if it was part of a construction project, but I don't think it would as a standalone.
Right.
right, if it's just for safety, then that probably doesn't really count. Okay. If this board ends up deciding that the intention of that capital reserve fund does not match with this, are there other funds that you guys would look to take this out of, or would it just be added on to your total project cost?
I think we would have to add it onto our total project costs. Our budget is pretty tight.
Okay. Comments from others?
Yeah, I'll comment. It seems to me that this is something that needs to be done. I mean, if the contemplation is that something is going to happen, whatever it may be, then it would seem to me that that falls within the scope. I would be in favor of, authorizing some amount, up to say 5,000. If it was more, you could come back, but for purposes of, moving this forward, because it's been a while. I think it needs to be done. So that would be, I don't know if you're accepting motions at this point as opposed to comment, but that would be my,
Yeah, I think that's the rub
Proposal.
there, is do we think it would meet the criteria for taking it out of that CRF?
I don't think so based off of how it's worded, but you could use ARPA funds for it.
Sure.
Shouldn't we wait and hear where they're at with the construction project itself too? Or-
They haven't even bid the construction project yet, so I mean, it's.
You know there's a delay of at least months.
You're still looking at a couple months before it starts,
Yes,
at the minimum.
right. We're still, the engineering, the engineering work is being done now. They've had somebody come in and do surveying, they're looking at the drainage system. So those are all, that's the engineering review stuff that has to happen before we put it out to bid. They should be done with it by the end of this month. That was our plan. That's what we're leaning on them to do. But then we need to go out to bid.
So we're looking October.
Is there still money in your capital reserve fund?
That is all pledged to the engineering.
It's design review and construction.
Yeah, we set aside, we had $30,000 left because we had all of the work done for the design and everything. And when the engineering had to take place, we sent a note to them that said it had to be $30,000 or less.
Okay.
So, and that was what was left in our fund, 31 something.
Yeah, I don't know the exact
Yeah.
number,
Yeah.
it's approximately that. And we went back to them and said, this is as high as we can go, so make it work.
And there's no other budget line item that would be appropriate for this sort of safety intervention, is there?
Budget is fine. It's the capital reserve and the warrant articles that you have to be careful about.
Oh, right,
wording.
sure, yeah, it sounds like that we should not use the capital reserve for building maintenance and repair for this.
Right,
But
but
I'm just
there's,
asking, is there another,
there's a library amphitheater capital reserve fund that was opened for design construction.
yeah, that's that one, right,
Right.
that we're talking about.
That was the $50,000 that we got.
Yep. Yep.
The warrant article.
But there's not really another line item in our budget that would be appropriate for this, I don't think.
Not for the
No.
library.
So to your question, Paul, if you wanted to make a motion, the only pot of money that would probably make sense is probably ARPA. If you wanted to make a motion to the board to approve some funds, it would probably have to be out of that pot of money.
what was the balance on that again?
ARPA's 270,
279?
270 something.
Yeah, so I would move then to authorize up to 5,000 from that line in order to move this forward as quickly as possible.
And this, do you think you'll have trouble getting a requote for what you guys need?
It was like pulling teeth. But I can, you know what I can do? I can reach out to the architect. He was the one who, gave me a list of people to call for
Okay.
that kind of stuff. so I'll reach out to him again and see.
Okay.
And, you know, as we said, we do have people in mind to ask to bid on the project, and perhaps they have something. I actually thought too about asking Mr. Falzoni, because he's donating to our project, and I mean, he's a construction guy, and he might have access
That's
to
a good
something
idea.
like that too. So,
Brentwood
So-
Fence might have a contact too.
excuse me?
Brentwood Fence.
I called them and they didn't, yeah.
So there's a motion on the table for preliminary approval of $5,000 from ARPA to provide safety fencing at the library. Are there any seconds on that motion?
I'm more inclined to wait to hear back from Liz. Sounds like she's got a couple of options. I don't know what others think, but
John,
we have
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. And the exact, so 5,000, contingent on their getting up to 5,000, and then they'd have to come back if there's a reappraise.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm an aye. All opposed?
Yeah.
Okay, so that passes 4-1. And then you guys can just let us know, and I think that makes this board feel better, that just knowing that at least for 6 months, no matter what happens with construction or doesn't happen, that we'll have at least a safety plan in place for now that reduces liability for all of us.
Yeah,
And
we'll-
hopefully
we'll get
still
some
allows you to
answers
use it.
too about whether like they can prorate
Sure.
the cost if for some reason the
Yep.
construction company comes in and does their own fencing and we
Yep.
have to remove
And
it.
you can certainly come back to us if we need to
Right.
change.
Okay.
Should I reach out to Karen with the answers for all this?
Okay. So the second part is, we went ahead and asked the construction or the engineering company to give us a limited construction option. And that is on page 3 of the, 2 of the documents that were put forth. The total of that would be approximately $40,412. As we had written in our letter to you folks, as a board, we met and talked about that as an option. And there are 3 things that could possibly happen if we go with that limited option. One is that the space may no longer be ADA compliant, and that's a real concern, because we would no longer have that basement to use for anything for the Friends, for any programs, and so forth. 2, the staff would lose access to the basement. Like right now, we go around the building with carts and whatever we need to get stuff from upstairs to downstairs, which is pretty frequent, a couple times a week anyway. Sometimes it's chairs or whatnot. We would be limited to what we could haul up and down from the inside stairwell. So that would be the second problem. And the third, we would still eventually need to raise the funds at a time when costs are likely to go up. So we're very hesitant as a board and as a director to go with a limited option if we can raise the funds, which we are, well underway doing. And so, does anybody have any questions on what they see on the limited option?
Do you have a sense of what that would look like or what that would mean?
Do you, because you actually did all the talking with them.
It's obviously some amount of demolition
Right, yeah.
and just
And just
stabilization.
stabilization, I call it a dust bowl in the back.
But essentially makes an unusable space.
Right, yeah, it just
I mean, there's
covers.
erosion control is what they have in here.
Right.
Short and
Right.
long term.
Right, flooding.
I don't know what that
control.
means. I don't
Right.
know if that's a temporary retaining wall system or something different.
Right.
We had talked about that.
Okay.
So,
There is $6,800 for fencing.
Yeah, I saw
Put it in
that.
there, right?
Lines up real nicely.
It's part of it.
Yeah. Maybe we can hang plants off the fence or
Right.
something like that to call it decorative, then that'd be a lovely look.
right. And our other fear is, $40,000 is a small change. So if we have to, if this is truly temporary, that's what it would be. So we'd be putting $40,000 into it and removing much of that to start again. So in total, over time, this project would become way more expensive than we had anticipated. So I think we're asking that you hang in there with us. We'll give you an update on where we are with fundraising, and maybe work with us to make this a reality sooner rather than later.
And I think, we just approved money for at least 6 months of fencing to buy some time.
Right.
So I'm assuming that makes the board feel relatively comfortable about liability reduction in that site. Okay. So do we have any good news, bad news, or
Yeah, so
otherwise
we
about
have
your
some-
fundraising?
So we have fun news. So we have been in touch with our philanthropic memorial gift, and to answer the question that was asked, that $100,000 from the donor is, the one thing we're waiting on is for their attorney to do up some kind of a document that will help us understand how we're gonna do the memorial piece of it. So this is a naming opportunity for this family. The amphitheater would be named after this patron. And, but there are limitations to that. We have to look at, longevity. We can't name something in perpetuity, because if it doesn't withstand, over time, or for some reason, we have to move from that facility, which we don't see doing, but anything can happen. We have to have those things sort of laid out so that we are not liable for mistakes that could be made in that.
And he has an attorney that's drawing up that paperwork.
Which then we will bring to our attorney
So
to
it
have
is,
him
we
look
know
at
it's
it.
there, the attorney is dealing with it, we can't make them work any faster. I don't know what these attorneys do, but they can't go any faster.
Can't tell you.
It's called billable hours.
Just
So,
more in my office.
But we're, we feel really good about it. The others of his family, his children are very involved in it as well. So we have regular communications with them. And again, it's with the attorney right now.
Okay.
So I've been texting with two of his daughters, and I had sent a possible press release that we wanted to put out once this is all finalized. And so she is working on some wording to make it very much appropriate for her mom. So they're that invested. They're working on the press release right now. The attorney's working on the other thing. And in my last communication with her, which was the end of last week, she said the hope was that we would have that documentation this week.
Great.
I have yet to see it, but, we know how the mail is too, so that could delay, because I'm assuming we would get a written document, not an email document, so.
And there was a question from public comment about if that gift comes with any restrictions. Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, no, as far as I understand, the only thing is the naming opportunity, and we have yet to discuss what that's gonna look like, what a plaque would look like, or something like that. But certainly, we've had naming opportunities at our library. We have a Marilyn Moorhead room, we have Bob Gilbert room, we have the Joyce Miller room, and this is one more piece like that, a little bit bigger, obviously, but I think we can come up with something. We've looked at some of the opportunities for plaques or signage, and there's some very nice options, and I think we pretty much have that under control. And he did not even.
There's no
blink.
strings attached, basically.
No.
Okay.
He just wants, the family wants, to memorialize their mother, and she just loved the library, was a big supporter of the library. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
His most immediate concern was if the library needed to grow, if the building itself needed to expand, where would we expand to? And Karen, we came over to look at all of the plans around the library and things like that, and we would have access to another space, because the amphitheater is at the back of the library, you have to go on the sides, because you wouldn't, it would be foolish to think we would expand on top of the amphitheater, that's not gonna happen. And so that was his concern.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time looking at the plans that we have here in town about where it could possibly be. So if you were looking at the library, the best option would be to the right-hand side, and then we would, you know, it would be a big deal if we wanted to expand the library. And as we talk about now too, libraries, the use of libraries have changed so much over the years. It's not really, you know, now we use it for meeting spaces and things like that, so it's more in and out kind of thing. So I think we could still accommodate it, and at some point, we would have expansion space in the basement as well.
Yeah, so our like, next step down the road would be to access an accessibility grant and go forward with trying to get some of that to do maybe an elevator or something. But that's not tied to this project at this time. But that's our goal, is that would be where we would expand.
Okay. So that's hopefully going to be announced over the next couple of weeks, that
Yes.
100,000.
Yeah.
Would you mind going through some of the other
Yep.
and just give us status updates and sort of
Absolutely.
what the confidence is in some of those numbers?
Yeah, so the Epps Jefferson Foundation is a local foundation. The folks live right here in Brentwood that are running the foundation. It's an arts and culture type of foundation, and so our project fits their needs quite nicely. Unfortunately, the foundation was a little concerned when the town voted to table it. He felt that if the town didn't have confidence in this, he was a little shaky on whether he wanted to give a decent amount of money. I have since explained that, you know, we are going forward with this somehow, and his money would certainly help. We did up a grant application, we sent all kinds of information. He came back with some other questions, some specific questions for us, and then came into the library last week for sort of a tour and a question and answer period directly with me. And so I am reasonably confident that he is going to give us money. Whether it will be, the 62,000 was what we asked. I don't know for sure if he'll give us that.
And what's the timing where we would know that?
I hope to hear from him within a week or two. I mean, he's had this for quite some time.
Okay.
Impact fees are already in there, and I know we have more than 50,000. We put 50 as a.
Do we know what's in there, Karen?
I can pull up. Thank you. The capital improvement, again, that 50,000 goes towards the engineering. The GoFundMe, unfortunately, is going a little slower than we had hoped, but we are also getting checks in the library, so some of the money that's coming in is not being reflected on GoFundMe. When we are done with the raffle, we will do a new update on GoFundMe and try to push that a little bit more, but we kind of put it to the side because people, you know, are more willing to give money when they're getting possibly something in return, so the raffle has kind of taken our attention right now. And
Do you have an approximate number of where your current GoFundMe / targeted stands relative to that 48 number?
Yeah, so we have approximately 7,000 between GoFundMe and checks. We have 25, oh, that's in the Friends Library. We have 5,000 from, we believe, from Joe Falzoni and the Gove Group. We have another donor who I believe is waiting to see where this all comes together, and has told me that the family plans to give money, a significant donation, but I think they want to see where we land. So again, that's a little iffy, but we're. Oh, yeah, and the garden club came to us, and they actually want to give us, I believe, $1,000 donation. So that, I think, is going to be voted on in August.
And the Friends are on board for
And the-
2,500.
Yeah,
Yep,
and that's
that's on
on,
here.
that's the bottom line. So the Friends also have 2,500 put aside.
Okay, I think Karen's got your number for you.
Oh,
58,000.
58,000, okay.
Okay, so that's 58.
The Friends have chosen not to do more at this time because, again, there's a feeling that, you know, this really is a town project and it's not their purview to raise money for something that's a project of this magnitude, they are looking forward to raising money for some of the accessories later on, the sunshades and cushions and things like that that we will need once everything is put together.
Right, even the architect's design for it, even though he put in things like the tables and chairs and umbrellas, those we never expected to, we expected to raise funds to do a fundraising project for those right along.
Yeah. The raffle, we have sold, do you have your tickets? Oh, I have it right here. We had, because those were the last two that we have sold, no, the numbers aren't on this, they're on your copies. I believe it's 37 tickets. I'm putting and I reached out to the Carriagetown News, and 36? Yes,
Seven.
37. So we've sold 37 tickets. We've had many people come in saying they want to give, but they didn't have cash on hand or a check. Unfortunately, we're not set up to take credit, which is unfortunate. So some people were gonna come back, and I've had quite a few people reach out that way. I also posted it to our library listserv for the state of New Hampshire, so other libraries are helping us promote this. And I have had somebody reached out to me today to buy tickets. So again, I reached out to Carriagetown News. They don't have a reporter to send in because I asked if they would do a feature on this. But she said, send pictures, send your article, and we will see what we can do for you. And that got me thinking that why go small? So I reached out to WMUR to see if they would do a story. And I have not heard back. I just reached out to them last night, but fingers crossed. Maybe give me some good juju, because wouldn't that be lovely? I kind of hoped I used the lemonade stand as an example of this being a very grassroots effort from lots of different people in town doing some great things.
Great.
So.
So sounds like by the end of the summer, next like month or 6 weeks, some of these numbers will have firmed up, settled out.
Yeah.
And it'll be, was it that go? And it'll be more clear what ARPA contribution you might be looking for.
Correct.
And is this, the 433 that's quoted here, is the entire 100% project without any of those downgrades, right? Okay,
Yeah. So
that's still an option as
That's a very
well.
high estimate.
correct.
Probably not going to come in at that.
Don't forget, they have a 10% contingency fee as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
But we threw everything in there to just make sure we have enough. We don't want to come in short on this. And then we tried to match income to that. So provided we're successful, which we are well on our way to doing so, we should be in pretty good shape.
great. Congratulations on your success so
Thank
far.
you. Thank you.
Any questions from the board about the fundraising? Okay, sounds good.
Jim, I'm just sorry, one question. Since it's a town effort, have any of the donors asked for tax deductible,
So
for a foundation, or the donor who's considering the 100,000, has he asked about tax deductibility of this gift?
like he knows all of that information, as does the foundation. Personal gifts, we haven't gotten to the threshold of what could be used for tax, because that has changed and it has risen to quite a level, unfortunately. But despite that, people are still very willing, which is nice.
So we,
Paul?
yep,
Paul?
Just
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
not a question, but just a comment. I think this is a potential for a real win-win for this town, and to bring, people together on something like this. So, the fact that you have people willing to, invest personally, that to me means a lot, and it should to everyone else.
and when this
Or I hope it
board,
does.
yeah, I agree with you 100, I think it's wonderful to
And it's
hear
been very
this is happening.
bipartisan. We've had
Yeah.
people from every walk of life approach us, which is very exciting, because we really hope to see some more of this melding
Yeah.
of people once again coming together as a town, as a community,
Yeah.
to do good things.
And when this board decided to make changes to how we were using ARPA and sort of pull it aside for capital improvements, our understanding was we were gonna be making an allocation to the library, but obviously did not have enough funds to fund it completely.
Right.
So, if we have to do, something in the realm of 100K or similar, I think this board will debate that, but in general, I think our intentionality was to use some of that money to help the library. So this is looking really promising.
Thank
We
you,
look forward to further updates.
thank you. And did I answer all the questions? Because I tried really hard.
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and is it okay to say that I have?
Sales
Say
pitch?
it anyway, I have a sales pitch. So I have tickets in my hand, if anyone wants them. They're $100 each. You can split them with a neighbor, $50 each. Most of the prizes are easy to split. And I have posters, so if anybody has any source where they think this could be posted, or want it to pass around or whatever, please just ask.
Great.
Do you read off the
Thank you.
prizes?
Yeah, so the grand prize.
We don't need to read them out.
Okay.
They're out there.
All right.
They're out there. No,
They are
come on.
out there.
We're moving
They are.
ahead with our meeting
And
list.
they're
Thank you.
on our website.
They're all around.
Can you get on like Venmo and PayPal for people?
You know, it's through our friends group, but the library doesn't have it. So that's an unfortunate piece, but it gets into some, we just, because we don't take money very often,
Yeah.
it's not something that we've looked into.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are moving on to Chief Ventura, update on road safety audit.
Is there still somebody in the hallway talking, or can we open the doors?
They're still in the hallway. Good evening.
Hi. The rain held off for your safety audit at least,
It
huh?
did, yes. So we started the road safety audit. We had a meeting, was it last Tuesday, I think? Several entities participated from town here. We had myself, Town Administrator Karen, Joe Bird was there. We had some residents that were invited from the area. We had DOT there, Highway Safety, State Police, had somebody from the feds there from the grant funding, and then it was Hoyle and Tanner is the civil engineering firm that was chosen out of Manchester to run the project. They were chosen by the state. So that's the multidisciplinary team that met. Basically, it was a 3 or 4 hour meeting. We met at the fire station, talked a little bit, went out, did a site walk and view for a little bit, came back. It's a longer process still. There's still a lot of work to do. There were several ideas thrown out in terms of what solutions, many of which you can imagine would improve traffic light, lighting, speed, different speed limits, things of that nature. So there was some short-term, some long-term goals set in terms of long-term solutions, rather. What they're going to do is they're going to, now that civil engineering group will get some numbers from us, some more crash data, some more traffic counts, things like that. Do their civil engineering stuff, and then they're going to spit out a report sometime this fall with some recommendations. In talking to some folks from that throughout the day, I kind of got a feeling for the way some of the things might go. Some of the short-term things that we talked about involved the stop signs on Southward. I'll talk about those in a second. But I kind of got the feeling, based on traffic count alone, it might not be enough of a traffic count to justify a light at that particular intersection. But interestingly enough, a roundabout was a very viable solution. I personally am in favor of a roundabout. I can tell you Karen was not. But strictly from a public safety standpoint, while roundabouts do create accidents, they don't create serious accidents. Knowing the roundabout in Lee, it's been there all my life, I know it creates some fender benders. That's about it. Those I can deal with. The fatalities I can't. So I would be very happy with the slow speeds through there, and even if there's a little bit of a line of traffic on Friday evenings, I'm fine with that. It is what it is. At the very least, there'll be some sort of reconfiguration of that intersection. If there's not a roundabout, there will undoubtedly be turn lanes. If there are turn lanes, hopefully there'll be good traffic lights there. You know, so, and, you know, there was some good things about the intersection, sightlines and things like that, that were just, it wasn't all just negativity about that particular intersection. But nonetheless, whatever project is chosen, it's gonna be big. It's not gonna be just a small, hey, let's put a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit sign there. I don't think that that's what's gonna come out of all this. One of the interesting things that came up on a short-term goal, or rather solution, proposed solution, that seemed to get some support from the community members were there, as well as maybe the engineering and DOT, believe it or not. We had talked at one of these meetings, one of the residents had brought up, you know, well, can we do something on South Road, on both sides of South Road? And we talked about what was there and what the state's right of way was and so forth. But what came up was those lighted or lit stop signs. There's not many of them in the state. If you go to Northampton at Post Road and 111, there's a new one there because they had so many accidents there. It's literally a stop sign, but it looks like it has Christmas lights on it. And it blinks, and it's solar powered. So part of the thought was to put one of those on each side of South Road and to repaint the stop line so people know where the stop line is. It's very faded over there. You couldn't tell where you're supposed to stop. So people just inch out and they inch out and they inch out. But what that stop light, or the stop sign with the lights does is it actually gives people a delineation where they should actually be stopping. Because a lot of times, think about the stop signs that you see. You see it, and you know you're supposed to slow down and stop. But most of the time, if you sit at an intersection, people cruise right past the stop sign and they stop as close to the road without getting hit as they can. So that's part of what one of the more popular short-term solutions is to put those on each side. I have priced out those signs. They're $1,500 each. I would figure at least another, maybe $1,000 for the repainting of lines on there if we rent a machine. I think Kingston's got somebody that they use that we could use. At any rate, total up to cost of about $5,000 to do that short term. I think it would go some way with the community members to show them that the town is serious about trying to correct this. But you have to think about the other side of things too. So if we decide to go forward with a $5,000 price tag, it's temporary because they're going to do something. If they put traffic lights there, those stop signs are gone. If they put a roundabout there, those traffic lights are gone, right? Those stop signs. The only instance in which they would stay is if they just put in turn lanes on 125 and widen the intersection.
Chief, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
The fact that we're doing the RSA, is that a guarantee that something will be done? That's kind of how you're talking about it.
Well, I'd be,
Is
well,
that in
let's put it this
your-
way, I would be shocked if nothing.
Okay.
came of this.
So extremely likely that
Yeah.
there will be an
No.
actionable
Yeah, there's gonna be
event
some
that
sort of
occurs.
action
Okay.
taken, yes. Given the traffic count, the fatalities, the amount of entities that are involved in this, including Executive Councilor Stevens, who's made this part of her infrastructure priority project. I'd be very shocked
Okay.
literally shocked if nothing happened in this intersection, but that's a good question. So, yes, sir.
On the stop signs, are the accidents that are happening coming from South Road, or are they generally the?
Well, that's a very good question, and one that I would think of as well. Generally, that the accidents there are not made by people running the stop sign at South Road onto 125, generally. Now, can I say for certain that some of the accidents in that area aren't from people? We all know those people who hurry up to get to the end of the stop, and then when you're driving down there, it looks like they're gonna come out, and you do one of these. I can't say for certain that that's not the reason for any accidents. I can't say it is or it isn't. But that's a very good question. We have no data to back up people running the stop signs at South Road.
I had a question in that same line. It feels like the last time, well, going back a ways to when there was that's all right. I think the motorcycle fatality.
Yep.
It
It was back in last
was
September.
sensitivity around talking about how it happened.
Yes.
Is that still the case, or is that, because that's where my mind went to with the stop signs, and I do think it's relevant to the big picture, is how are these accidents, especially the last
Well,
fatality.
that particular accident, I can't, without giving these specific facts, but you'll be able to deduce them.
And by the way, I'm asking because if it's not, you know, ethical or
No, that's fine.
proper to talk about it, then don't, but,
No, because you can deduce what happened by what I'm gonna tell you.
yeah, yeah.
Right. We do it on 125 every day of the week. If you travel 125 and you come upon somebody taking a left-hand turn to get into a business, what do you do?
Go around them.
Right,
That's what everybody does.
right, and that's illegal. You're leaving the roadway to overtake a vehicle, technical RSA, particular mumbo jumbo. But everybody does it, including the police. Otherwise, because guess what happens? If you come up on that car and you stop, what is the person behind you gonna do? They're gonna beep at you, and they're gonna give you the finger on the way back.
Or they'll go around you.
They'll go around both of you. Not anybody in this room, of course.
But that's what's gonna happen to you, right? And they're gonna get impatient, and then you're gonna be, well, the heck with you, right? And if you're having a real bad day, it'll continue all the way to Epping, right? We don't want that, right? But, and that's one thing if it's on a straightaway and they're just turning into a business. But if you do that at an intersection such as South Road, guess what happens? Just picture yourself coming on a car that's taking a left-hand turn to go towards Fremont on South Road, and you're coming northbound. And you go around that car, and you're in a short car, and there's a truck that's sitting there wanting to take the left-hand turn. Can you positively see any traffic that's coming this way and might be taking a left to go east on South Road?
No.
I can't, even in the truck that I drive for the town. I'm very cautious when I overtake a car on the right going either direction. You have to be. But in our travels, on a Sunday afternoon, and we're not paying attention, or it's a nice day, or any small distraction, or anything above, accidents happen like that. So, and that right there is a sightline issue caused by no turn lanes. A turn lane might avoid that, might, I say. Because even if there's a turn lane, it widens the intersection a little bit and you're still looking ahead and you see a truck turning left. If it's a big truck, you might not see that car, other car turn left, who knows? But you know, again, speeds at that intersection combined with everything else that's going on there are the cause of the accidents. It's not just one thing. So, does that answer your question, Liz?
No, but I don't think it's important to get down
Yeah,
to
that's the gist of
gritty
what happened.
details where, you know,
That's the
people-
gist of what
yeah.
happened, overtake on the
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I mean,
and you
you
don't see
you
somebody
answered
taking
it
a
in the
left.
global sense, I get it,
I think to your bigger question, both of you though, a flashing stop sign on South Road would not have impacted those types of accidents, would not have prevented those, correct?
Just,
I don't believe so in my professional opinion, but
Right.
I've been known to be wrong, I don't know. But
which is not to say we don't do
It
it.
won't prevent anything, right?
Right.
But some of the recent accidents we've had would not have been prevented by the flashing stoplights.
Right.
Stop signs, sorry.
I also hesitate because I don't want it may make some people feel good, but also, I don't want people to have this false sense of security either, like
No,
it's
and that's
not
a good
actually
point.
solved.
Here's what my suggestion would be, and Kara has, or we've talked about it, and there is some money to pay for this little project, but, you know, it's up to you guys to mull over which direction you wanna go. And I'll give you some thoughts of mine that might help, might not, but there's an expectation for the town to do something right now. But if we put a Band-Aid on an artery wound, we're not doing much, right?
Especially an expensive $5,000 Band-Aid.
A $5,000 Band-Aid. We're gonna get a report in the fall. Let's see what the report says. Will a stop sign save lives? I don't know. But again, to your point, it's not that we have a lot of evidence that stop sign, we're not stopping at those stop signs, it's causing a problem. But again, people wanna see action, and I don't blame them. You know, there's a big push in this town to see some action at that intersection. It's very evident by some of the work that's been done by Eric Canty, and those folks with the, you know, getting Councilor Stevens on board. There's a lot of push for that, and I'm glad for it. Because I've tried to do it at an intersection before without as much push, and I haven't gotten as far as we've gotten.
Can we rip those signs out and put them someplace else if we don't need them at South Road anymore?
Absolutely. Yeah, they literally are just a stop sign. with a solar, you know, a panel on top. So we could certainly use them somewhere else in town. It's not like we gotta throw them in a scrap pile and let it after we're done. Where we put them, I don't know, that's, you know. DOT has said, they said at the meeting that they would work with the town to make that happen if we needed to. So they've basically already verbally assented to, basically giving us somewhat of an easement to their spot right there if we need to.
And they wouldn't contribute?
No, and I've run into that.
Good
No,
question.
It's a good question, I've run into that also, about putting calming devices on state roads. They'll say, the furthest they'll go is, yes, you can do it, you own it, you own the liability, and you gotta fix it if it breaks. And if our plow hits it, you still gotta fix it when it breaks. That's about as much as they'll get involved in. I guess that's my cue.
What about the flashing, as you approach Exeter High School, they have one of those similar idea, the solar powered flashing,
The black and yellow?
speed signs.
Yep.
What about those guys?
The problem
Not
is.
saying it goes off every time I drive by, but.
No, no, it stays the same color.
It does.
Yes, of course it does. No, I think the state would be very hesitant to put something like that on the state road of that magnitude. If it was Middle Road or you know, something like that, they might be. Because I put one of those on a state road up north before. Again, same circumstances. They said, yeah, go ahead, you know, and those aren't cheap either. Those are actually about $7,500 a sign, to put those up. But I don't think that they would do that. And if you notice, I think it was yesterday or Tuesday, they took down those lit signs that they had put up. Because they needed to go somewhere else. They had washouts all weekend and they needed to go to all of them. But those types of signs that have been up there, they're pretty much landscape after the first couple of weeks anyway.
Yeah.
Nobody pays attention to them.
Okay.
But there is talk about, if you look up in the lead, there's a black and yellow, like the black and yellow signs you see is intersection ahead. There's blinking ones of those up north, and they might go as far as that, but I don't know. But that would be in what the recommendations would be. But the good news in my message to you folks is it's taking, progress is happening.
Great.
So when your constituents ask you, hey, what's going on with South Run, you think it's
Well, I think we've made tremendous progress just getting the road safety audit, pushed up so much, and we
there's gotta be some
leapfrogged,
upset towns.
we
right now.
leapfrogged ahead of other people, so I think we've made a lot of progress.
Do you think it'd be worth just getting the top line put in? I mean, that's short money.
It wouldn't hurt. That would not hurt at all.
No matter what,
Yeah, I mean, that's,
It should be there anyway.
Painting them.
just paint,
Just
repave,
paint the white line, the big
just
thick white line.
redoing the stop line.
Yeah.
that seems
Yeah.
kinda like a no-brainer, that
Yeah.
probably needs to be done.
That
no matter
wouldn't
what.
hurt. Why don't I do this? Why don't I get with Wayne on that and get a price, and if we can fit
Yeah.
it into a regular budget, which it shouldn't be that bad,
Yeah.
we'll just do it,
Yeah,
you know? I don't think we need to come back to the board for an
Yeah.
approval on painting a road, like that.
that feels like a
That's a good idea,
compromise.
and
Yeah.
that'll be something.
I also feel that if there's community members who are watching in person or on video who feel strongly about the flashing stoplights, I know, like you said, people feel strongly in town about this, just shoot Karen an email. She'll share it with the board, if
That was
we're
a
curious
suggestion
to
of the
see
team.
what the public feels about this.
Just so you know, that was a suggestion of the team, and if we could maybe keep consistent with that. Because somebody did ask, well, who do we go to with ideas, and thankfully the suggestion of Hoyle and Tanner was to go through Karen, so that
Right.
you guys aren't getting individual requests.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
on our
anytime
stream.
the community wants to contact all of us, the best way is always to go through Karen.
Yep.
So that we don't have
Yep,
quorum
and that's great.
issues, so,
Because there might be some community members after tonight
Yeah.
that might want to do that.
and I hope they will. So definitely, message us if you're interested. Okay.
Thanks for
you.
your support.
Thank
on
you
this.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Chief Bird got bumped, right?
Yes.
Not doing that tonight, okay. So the last discussion item we have on here is a rediscussion of Paul's proposed amendment to committee selection. We had bumped this a meeting because, John, you weren't here for this discussion, and we wanted your input. We wanted the full board here. No pressure at all. We just had a brief conversation about it last time. We didn't get into much specifics. And we did have an outstanding item in that we were waiting for feedback from New Hampshire Municipal about 91A. Did we hear anything from them?
Yes, So the intent for non-public for reputation, they said that it should constitute an impairment of someone's reputation, and it should be a material impairment and must prove damage standing in the community.
And did they give any input on whether or not these sorts of discussions would fall under that?
They will not give that specific level of detail.
Okay.
So it is still subject somewhat to your discretion. And how you would define what is a material impairment.
Right. So Paul, I don't know if you want to, for John's benefit, just kind of restate sort of what your intentionality was with this amendment.
Yeah, I mean, in basic intentionality, the article is, the second paragraph article is presently we have into public session to these discussions on the appointment, and don't think that appropriate. My understanding council is really consistent. May go in if discussed. Material likely adverse many aspects. But for instance, for being open in regard to the would gave more definite gave a fair in the present area. Concern the book is the balance being board diverse. I think it out more discussion. Components of amendment. I could deliberate may go into non-public if the matter be material, public if the matter be material and likely affect the reputation of any applicant unless such person requests an open meeting. And then with respect to bullet point 5, I'm certainly open to amending to it merely saying to the extent practicable, the board may seek to have balanced opinions for its committee appointments.
My only question about 5 is it sounds very affirmative action type required.
Well, and I know, and that wasn't the intent, but.
I don't know how to reword it so it doesn't, but I mean, it
Yeah.
kind of sounds like,
Well, that's why I'm trying to.
I don't want to have a college admission scandal going on.
Yeah. I thought I was being politically correct by using diverse, but I'm certainly open to deleting diverse and using, the term balanced instead.
I don't know of any, I mean, I've been serving in elected office and different contexts for a while. I just don't know any board or committee appointments where decisions are made talking about people in their applications in a public setting. And I just, you know, at every level of government down to us, the lowest people on the totem pole, things like this are done. I'm sure that there are exceptions. I can't think of any at the moment. Like the standard practice is committee appointments are committee appointment, like they're made, not really deliberated in public. I don't think it's a transparency issue. I think it's like we're making kind of hiring decisions, and in that, I personally don't feel like it's appropriate to be sitting here comparing Susie against Sarah in public. I'm not going to be able to feel comfortable with that. And I guess my second question for Karen is, did our attorneys say that what we were doing was counter to RSA currently?
They won't opine on what they would classify as material or immaterial.
Well, that we didn't talk to our council though, right?
NHMA.
Just,
No, this
we
was
went
just
through
NHMA.
NHMA because it's free to ask them for their input.
We didn't,
Okay.
we didn't take, at this
Yeah,
point, the next step.
That would
guess-
certainly be our option, is to run it by to see if our council feels that we would be violating 91A.
I'm not requesting that or asking for that. I think my position remains unchanged.
And I think that's the two questions here. So the one discussion point, I think, is the 91A non-public versus public. And then the actual wording of this, we can also talk about in terms of what the board feels comfortable with. Other thoughts from you guys about the public versus non-public?
I'm up in the air. I mean, I see John's point where somebody might not speak freely if they have questions about somebody's character or ability.
Intent?
But I also am a staunch person of, transparency and keeping things out of non-public. So I can see both sides.
Yeah, I think the issue, if we were to go to council and find out from council, big if, from council that, we did have to do it in a public session, my issue isn't so much about the wording at this point as much as I don't think we probably need the bullets. It's kind of is it public or is it non-public? I mean, I think maybe some of the language can stay in there, but I think, the more language you put in there, I think the more likely you run into conflicts and.
It's almost prescribing what an elected official,
Yeah.
how an elected official should be voting.
Yeah.
You
So I
can't
think-
really do that.
Yeah, so I just think the big issue is just, is it done in public, is it done in non-public?
What's your opinion on that?
Right now, I think for the reasons that were stated in our last meeting as well as John's, I still think it's a non-public discussion. When you're talking about, people's applications and, it comes down to, neighbor pitted against neighbor potentially or whatever, I still think that's the right way to go. And if, obviously, if voters in town think that the committees are going in the wrong direction, they're gonna look to their elected officials, which is us. And if they don't like it, they'll wanna make a change. But other than that, I mean, aside from that, they've elected us to make those kinds of decisions. And, I'll just say on top of that, since, this one, so Jen, when you and I started, and then, so, you know, we had the creation of the Energy Committee, the Communications Committee. We've had some other appointments for committees and so forth, and I would challenge anyone to say that those, creation of those committees and the staffing of those committees hasn't gone well. I think the track record is good, and I think that I'm certainly committed to continuing that kind of positive momentum. So that's where I'm at.
All right. I agree a little bit with Andy. I think you could potentially make a case to do this in public or non-public, but I think I agree with John that I think non-public, when I reflect on the last couple of appointments that we've done, I think we've had a good open conversation with helpful information, and I do worry that some of the information that we talked about potentially would not have been provided in a public session. So I'm leaning towards this being non-public, as we've done. I do think, in terms of talking to council, the municipal definition of reputation, I think, is a pretty broad one that I personally feel does cover these conversations, which are literally about people's background, credentials, education, work experience, personality, intent, behavior, you name it. I feel that that falls under reputation. So I am more in favor of continuing as we have been doing in non-public for now. So that's my thoughts. If anyone wants to or feels ready to make any kind of motions or suggestions on this amendment, I would be open to taking those.
Yeah, I'll move it, you know, with the amendments that I suggested. You know, again, alternatively, you know, if there's a feeling that this is, you know, appropriate and legal, I would also entertain having our council look at it, because I do have, you know, serious reservation about the legality of it as drafted. The genesis of the bullet points, I think, was because there were 4 very limited criteria, 2 of which were troubling to me due to vagueness. 1 in particular, ideology, and 2, track record. I think those, you know, are problematic in terms of vagueness. So this was at least an attempt on my part to give greater definition for us to use as guidelines. And you'll note that this is not something that is mandatory in our discussion. They're, you know, framed in terms of may. So these are things that we may consider, you know, but to give some guidelines. So that was really the genesis of it.
Would you like to make a motion to put this forward, or would you like to make a motion that we run this by council before making a formal board vote?
Well, I mean, is there a sense that you would run this by council?
I think as a board member, if you feel that that is necessary for you to feel comfortable about the legality, then I think that would be a reasonable motion for you to put forward. We just didn't do it to save money, right? And hoped that Newton NHMA would give us like on the silver platter answer, and they didn't really. They left it vague, like it's vague now. So I think if you want to make that suggestion, I'm sure you'd probably have some support from other board members to get an official legal opinion from council before making these decisions.
In my vast political experience, you don't have the votes to get this passed right now, so I would put it to council to say whether we need or we don't.
I love how Andy puts
Just to
things.
be blunt.
Well,
I
no,
love how Andy puts
Andy,
it.
I see the tea leaves, you know, and I'm fairly astute when it comes to that. I'm not that much of
You
a,
can count.
yeah, I can count, but nevertheless, I still feel it's important to bring forward.
Yeah,
I agree.
absolutely.
But, I mean, if there is,
That sounds like moving towards a
So I'll
motion.
move that we ask council about this.
okay,
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor of officially asking council about the legality of non-public committee appointments?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's a pass, and we will bump this. As a secondary corollary discussion, We have on our to-do list reappointments and new appointments for Communications Committee. Would this board like to hold on that until we clarify this issue?
I don't see why we would do that. I mean, we have a process
Okay.
in place.
I don't think we need to hold
Get it done.
Just wanted to make sure everybody felt okay, because this is an open issue still. But this is, you know, we can make changes down the road. There's more committee appointments. all the time.
Communications committee is saying no.
They're saying no, meaning they want to go forward. Okay?
I have public before we go into non-public.
Yes, well, yeah, we're not ready for non-public yet. Okay, so we are gonna close that issue for now. We're gonna come back after discussing with council, and then we will move that issue forward. Regular business, so we'll let Karen have the floor first.
I have pricing for oil for our next heating season.
Uh-oh,
Oh,
okay.
boy.
Do we need to brace ourselves?
No, I think it's
Oh,
better than last year.
Okay, good.
So it's locking in at $3.05 a gallon.
Oh, that's actually sounds pretty good. What was last year?
Last year was $3.29,
Okay, so better.
so we're on the decliner.
And that locks us in for how long?
That is the entire winter, that's this heating season through May of next year.
Nice. And you don't need to vote on that, do you?
Yes,
You do need to vote on that, to accept that?
yes.
Was there any other options, or was that
That is the lowest bid, the others was like $3.09.
and
Motion.
who's that with?
That's through that Dead River.
No, who's the 305?
Oh, Hartman, who is our current vendor.
Third
I
motion.
hear a motion. I hear a definite motion from Mr. Morgan. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so that's a pass for 305 for oil lock-in.
This is the 2020, their fiscal years, so this is the 24 fiscal year highway safety grant for PD overtime for speed enforcement, DWIs, and distracted driving. So I need 3 board members to sign this top page. I need just Jen to sign the next 2, and then I need all of these pages initialed.
Okay. And explain to us what exactly this entails.
This covers reimbursement of our overtime expenses for the office just to go and do these enforcement patrols.
Up to this limit of $8,200?
Yes.
So we're basically voting to accept this grant that goes up to $8,200?
Yes.
And I believe there's a 20% match.
Yes, that is correct.
Motion.
Other questions or discussion? I have a motion
Second,
and a second. Any questions or discussion?
highway safety loves to see my name on the terms.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye. So we're sub-recipient.
Yes.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Karen, were you able to get a price for propane for next year?
Not yet,
Oops.
but our preliminary rates are level funded. That helps. And that is all I will entertain for budgets until after Labor Day.
Okay. All right, it's a bunch of tabs there.
This is a land use change tax warrant and bill for a portion of the land coming out of current use for River Run. It is $161.
$161, all right.
So this is 0.33 of an acre coming out of Conrad Marcotte's old parcel.
Coming out of common use.
Yes.
Okay. I'll take a motion to approve this.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm an aye.
Aye.
There too? This is to
Yes.
sign?
And then just the last 4.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
Last 4 tabs.
Lastly, your next meeting is scheduled
Yes.
for Tuesday, August 1st, and National Night Out is from 5 to 7 p.m. that evening at the rec center.
Yep.
So I'd like to see if you want to meet earlier that evening, or if you want to move your meeting to a different evening that week.
I think we can meet at 4 with a limited agenda.
That's what we've done in the years
Oh, yeah,
past.
these.
I will be out of the country that week and the following week, so Andy will have to chair if you're gonna meet in person.
Is there a quorum for 8-1?
I can be virtual, but I can't be here in person.
Can you two be present?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, I do believe.
So abbreviated meeting at 4?
4?
Everyone sounds in favor of that? Okay, should we take a vote? I disagree. I think I disagree. Okay.
4
then
o'clock,
John-
sorry.
Yes, 4
We
o'clock.
said 4 o'clock here or there.
Here.
Here. Okay.
Will you send me a link?
Yes. How long will you be gone?
I'm not
Oh,
very
you're-
far, I'm
okay.
just,
I was just trying to plan ahead for Jillian's meetings that week.
not fair.
Anything else you have for us?
No.
Okay. We will go around with committee updates and any other board business. I'll start with Andy.
So conservation met last week. There was a resident request for meeting to be live streamed / recorded. I failed to get a second on my motion to do that. During the meeting, there was a discussion, they were also having some discussions about 91A and what should be discussed in non-public. The audience had brought up a section of 91A that said any real estate transactions that were made, done in non-public, as soon as that was done, that those should be released. So I believe there was a 91A request put in for those because the full project was denied. The August meeting, there was a motion accepted to discuss the fuller project on whether we were gonna go forward or not.
So reopen that,
Yeah, to discuss
parcel?
reopening.
to discuss reopening that parcel in the
Yes.
August meeting? Okay. And Andy and Karen and I did meet with Mark Young, and I think had a good, pretty fruitful discussion with him about what kind of assistance he might need in moving forward with the bond. And I think it was really helpful for him to realize that there's other avenues out there for assistance, and that moving forward with some of these conservation parcels is a lot of work and is pretty hard for a committee who meets once a month to do all that work. So we left that meeting with sort of an understanding with him that there was some interest in hiring a consultant. Was that discussed at the meeting or
A
not?
little bit, but
Little
not much.
Okay,
Um,
but that was kind of how we left it with him.
I also do think in the future, when we're looking at hiring employees, that that board definitely could use administrative help,
Sure.
whether it's, a part-time position or,
Like a Jillian.
yeah, like Jillian's busy now, she has planning, economic development, and ZBA. But, sometime it's a lot to ask a volunteer
Yep.
person to do
It makes a world of difference.
some of the, I'm sure there's a lot of committees that find the same way,
Sure.
that, they could use administrative help above and beyond
Yep.
their monthly meetings.
Mark certainly seemed very interested in some help when we talked to him, that was for sure.
Kip could use some administrative help, so you could lump those two land use sectors together.
We could certainly talk about that. Come budget season.
Yes.
We could
After
talk-
Labor Day,
Yeah, right, we could talk about that.
that's all.
John?
I've been out of town, but BudCom has been doing a awesome job of making sure that the members are getting introduced to the various town departments and getting a thorough understanding of what the needs and use of town funds looks like inside each one of those departments. So thank you to the chair for making sure, taking that on and doing such a great job with it.
Russ?
The only two on my list that haven't already reported out tonight, ZBA, we have a meeting coming up. We have an application in, I think, next week. And then Energy Committee, the chair, Rick LeBrecq, continues his excellent research work and assessing the solar panel situation, the contract and all that. And the most recent email that he sent to, just lost the name of the solar company.
Revision?
Thank you. Revision was to ask, Karen, I can talk about it, right? He asked for an extension of the deadline. basically, for us to make a decision on.
Is there a deadline? I thought we kind of could make that decision at any point, or is there only a set period of time where we can make that decision that we want to buy it
I
out?
think on each anniversary date, you have 90 days prior to that
Gotcha.
to enlist your intent for that given year. So
Gotcha.
he's asking for that extension for this coming year.
Gotcha, okay.
And I think he intends potentially to be on the agenda for 8/15.
That's it.
Okay. Paul?
The only thing I have is the community, the CIP,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, the capital improvement. Spoke with Jillian, I guess there was a little more information that was being sought in order to complete it. They got that information. Glenn is apparently putting together a spreadsheet, so we should have that information, I'm thinking Thursday at the next planning meeting, and at that point, put the subcommittee in place for purposes of reviewing that and getting some priorities in order as to what we're going to be looking at moving forward,
Great.
so.
Wonderful. Thank you for kind of rediscussing that with those groups. Okay. I don't have any updates. School is on hiatus right now until the fall. Just to remind people that I need to check in with Daphne, but I haven't heard anything from her. We're waiting on the Secretary of State to give us some clarity about the primaries. Once we have some clarity about the dates of the primaries, the school has expressed a willingness for us to go back to them about trying to get that additional election day covered in the next school year. So that is still an open issue that we will take back up presumably in September. So I'll give you an update once that happens. And that's all I have. Any other board business before we go into non-public? Okay. And Karen, what do we have for non-public? Do we have
Just
legal or
communications.
just the appointments? Okay. So we will go into non-public for reputation. I will take a motion for that.
Move.
Second.
And I'll go around. Andy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Russ?
Aye.
Paul?
Nay.
I'm an aye, so that's a pass. Thank you.
I'm just gonna use the bathroom.
Okay, sure.